Billy, you want to talk Scott Rolen real quick?
Let's talk Scott Rolen. He's going into the Hall of Fame. His career was interesting to me. He made 7 All-Star teams.
I don't even know who he is.
So that's a problem because you're not a major diehard baseball fan, but you know Barry Bonds. You know Roger Clemens.
I sure do.
You know Sammy Sosa.
I do.
You know Mark McGwire.
And they stop it right there.
And they're not going in.
See, and that's the problem. Right. I can care less about who goes to Cooperstown until Mark McGwire gets in. I think he deserves it. The steroid use thing, listen, I get it. But at some point, you still got to put the bat on the ball. Like it's a talent,
right? That's my point. My point is, just because listen, the minor leagues were littered with guys using steroids because they wanted to make the big paycheck.
Yeah.
And just because you take steroids doesn't mean you're going to have inflated numbers. He averaged 25 home runs a year for his 17-year career. That's a good number. It really is. But it's not 40.
No.
You know, to me, the benchmark is 500 kind of rubber stamps you in. There's very few players that have hit 500 that aren't in.
So now that all these guys that can't get in, do you think that the Hall of Fame will become watered down?
Well, I'm glad you said that because to me, what we're seeing now is a product of exactly what you just said. In 21, there was no induction ceremony because nobody met the bar. I wrote down some numbers that I wanted to use to make this point. His first year on the ballot, you got to be out of the game 5 years to be on the ballot. Scott Rolen's first year on the ballot, he received 10% of the vote. Now, you've got to get to 75%.
That's alarming.
That's
and
wow.
The biggest argument for me making, and I love Scott Rolen. He was a good guy and was a very serviceable, successful player. By the way, 8 Gold Gloves. That's nothing to shake a stick at.
That's really
but
good.
But Omar, by the way, Omar will not get in, and there's off-the-field reasons for that. But Omar had 13 Gold Gloves or whatever the number was. Like, he was a perennial Gold Glover. But after his first year, Rolen's numbers went like this: 10%, 17%, then it doubled to 35%, then 53%, then 63%, and finally this year, 76%.
How many chances do you get before you get
10?
So he was on 7?
Are you on? I think you're
10.
on for 10.
I think that's right.
So this was 7 for him?
Yeah, and I could be wrong on that. It might be 7. I don't know, because I think Clemens is now
he
Clemens
can't get in.
and Bonds now go to the Veterans
Committee.
So it might, and I don't know. They've probably been out of the league for 10 years. I think it's 10. I should know that. But
well,
that's as Bull would
10.
say, that's a bad job by me.
Well,
okay, it is 10 years, so it's not a bad job by me.
Do you want me to make the case for Scott Rolen why he's in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, there is a case to be made, by the way, for that.
I think there absolutely
I just made the case for why I don't think he is a Hall of Famer.
It's silly that like he hadn't done anything since
I
he
know.
got 10% of the vote.
That's what drives me nuts. He hasn't had a hit a home run, made a defensive play since 10% of the block thought he was a Hall of Famer. He's at 75%?
My biggest problem with the Hall of Fame in general, any sport, baseball is the worst of it. If you have to ask yourself, is player X a Hall of Famer, it's either a yes or no answer. It's not yes in 5 years.
Skip
it's not
Bayless
yes in
used to
7
say
years.
that.
It's a yes or no answer.
Skip used to say this. Skip said if you have to think about it or go to Google, the answer is no. It's not the Hall of Very Good. It's the Hall of Fame.
They watering it down. That's what I'm saying.
Why should he be in the Hall?
Because listen, I don't think WAR is the end-all, be-all metric, but I think I think it's a pretty good indicator of how you
wins
rank
above
eras.
replacement.
Wins above replacement. Yeah. He has a higher WAR than Manny Ramirez.
I know he does.
He's on par with Gary. I just looked it up. He's on par with Gary Carter, who's widely regarded.
Now, a lot of that has to do with his defense.
Okay.
Because he was a Gold Glove defender.
He's right with Derek Jeter in WAR. Larry Walker, who's a Hall of Famer. Jim Thome, who's a Hall of Famer.
I know.
So he's right there. I mean, defense is just as important to the game as offense.
This is where I'll make the argument against WAR, because I think stats can be very useful in certain situations, and I think they're very misleading in other situations.
Analytics.
You're using WAR again. He played a different position than Manny Ramirez and Derek Jeter.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not apples and apples. The expectation of a third baseman when it comes to power is that 20 to 25 home runs a year. He averaged 25 for his career. So I don't want to see you just meet the bar. unless you're Brooks Robinson, who is probably the greatest defensive third baseman of all time, unless you're Brooks Robinson, I'm going to need more out of your bat than 25 home runs a year to put you into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
You're a perennial all-star. You were a great player, but were you Hall of Fame worthy? And that's where I think to use WAR that standard, I think that's a little misleading.
The way I look at Hall of Fame is this. Give me a Hall of Fame third base guy that was good offensively and defensively.
Well, Mike Schmidt.
Okay, Mike Schmidt. Are you saying that he and Mike Schmidt is the same?
Yeah, they're in the same club, and I think that's a disservice to Mike Schmidt.
And here's one of my other issues too, and once again, this goes back. If you don't have unbelievable postseason success, which I do think puts you in a separate category.
Right.
Question for you three, and I'm sure if any of you know this answer, I'll be shocked. What's the highest Scott Rolen ever finished in an MVP vote?
I'd say 5th, 6th, if that high.
He had one season
Third.
where he finished 4th.
Dang, that was close.
He never finished in the top 3 in MVP voting, and in baseball, it's split up AL and NL.
Right.
Never was at one point in the season he considered one of the 3 most valuable offensive players or position players.
Period.
I guess his pitchers count. Yeah. Never top 3. If you're not in that the Baseball Hall of Fame is so screwed up in other ways, but it's just so watered down.
It is screwed up, but here's why I think they're there. In 21, there was no induction class.
Yeah.
They had to vote someone in. They had to. Yeah.
Because you can't keep going year after year that is baseball's day to shine. Outside of, obviously the postseason, it's a day where everybody that's a fan of the sport looks to celebrate the greats. And what the establishment has decided, and by establishment I mean the writers in this case, because they're the ones that put you in or keep you out. They have made the decision that if there was a hint of steroid use around your career, you are not going to Cooperstown. There are exceptions. Mike Piazza is in. Piazza was a guy who I think everybody widely agreed that this guy used. There are other guys that I think there's that same, at least, question mark around their careers that they are clearly taking a stand on and saying, no, you are not getting in. So what is that? So that era of the 90s that gave us Manny Ramirez, David Ortiz, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, these guys who are explicably tied to steroid use, they're not going in. So what we're going to have at the Hall of Fame is an era of the game that is widely underrepresented. That's why Scott Rolen's going in.
And it almost makes it worse because when he's the only one going in and he's the entire focus.
Well, Fred McGriff is going in on the veterans because Freddie was voted in on the veteran side, which, by the way, I thought Freddie's career
I thought Freddie deserved to be in years ago.
Freddie had 500 home runs. Why isn't he in?
They're not going to let Mark McGwire in.
No.
The veterans, he might eventually get in. All those guys.
Mark McGwire get in, I'm canceling my plans, and I'm going.
You're going.
Yeah.
He was your favorite.
That was my dude.
Yeah. He was listen.
Dude.
What's interesting is baseball has always been the hardest one to get. Basketball, they let anybody in. They open the door.
I know they do.
Basketball lets everybody in. There's no. I've talked to elite NBA players who are upset with how easy it is and how watered down. It's just a basketball.
Lyle Alzado was literally walked out of a test tube one day with muscles. He was. If you talk to anybody that knew Lyle Alzado, and for those of you that don't, Google his career. He played with the Browns, most famously with the Raiders. Had an unbelievable career. He was an animal. He had needle marks everywhere, and
pincushion.
He literally was a pincushion. And it's funny how the sports view steroid use differently. Guys get suspended for it in the NFL. And DeAndre Hopkins will resume his career as if nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
But if you were even whispered to have been around someone that used steroids, oh, well, you know what? He played with the A's in the 90s, and you know what the Bash Brothers were doing? It's a wrap.
Yeah.
You're tainted forever. It's funny how the sports view use so differently.
Get a hold of yourself, man. What is wrong with you?
He had needle marks.
He did. Lyle Alzado was a freak. Look him up. Look him up right now.
You don't know Lyle Alzado?
First of all, his picture, he looks like he just walked out of a jungle. And he was as crazy as his pictures look.
I can't believe you don't know Lyle Alzado.
Well, look, why would he? He wasn't even born when Lyle Alzado was dead.
God,
probably.
we are so old.
Lyle died of an enlarged heart.
Tyvus,
I
I have
brain
no
Oh,
idea
you're
who
right.
that
He
is.
did have a brain
No
said
idea
what?
who that is.
You don't know Lyle.
See, he said he don't know who that is.
Well,
Man,
he probably
I'm
quit
going home
playing
and
in
going
the
to bed.
early 80s. They weren't even born yet.
Yeah, but he was like a legendary player.
I know he was.
I thought.
In his day, he was.
Yeah.
But, I mean, the guy was a known steroid user, and he was celebrated for his entire career.
That was 77.
He's probably in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
And this dude.
I told you.
Yeah.
He
Look
was
at
like
this.
he was right off the. He was central casting for a football player from the 70s and 80s that used steroids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was celebrated.
Who's the
you
guy
know?
from the program? Remember the juiced
Oh, yeah, I
up dude
remember
from
the program.
Yeah,
That's him.
that's him.
That's him.
That's Lyle.
Latimer. What did Latimer? I think it
And
was
you know what?
Latimer.
There are a lot of former Browns that are still living that could come on this program and tell us stories that would blow our minds. Because I've heard stories about Lyle in team settings that are just like, no way that happened, and everybody said no, it happened. that was Lyle Alzado. They should make a movie about that guy. All right, we're out of time. I want to tease overtime, and I want to take a special second to do this because McNuggets, who is now a comedy expert, now that he's boning up on how to do stand-up on February 8th at Hilarities. If you don't have your tickets, act now. They're going fast. He tells me that this is going to be the funniest overtime we've ever done.
Yeah, Jason, who wasn't supposed to be here, I showed him it yesterday. Jason, will you test?
It's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good.
All right.
It's really good.
I can't wait to see it.
I'm scared. I'm nervous.
It's supposed to be the funniest soundbite in Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show history.
Yeah, we don't have a ton of sound bites in the history of the show, so it's definitely
No, we don't.
unquestionably the funniest.
All right.